This contraption lying back here is a hang glider, very earthbound as you can see, but it's a device which has enabled man to come as close to flying like a bird as just about anything else we've had so far. My name is George Plimpton. I'm a writer who likes to try what he writes about, so later on I'm going to try to fly one of those things. I wish it looked more buoyant. First we're going to watch some people who are really good at it. Pilots here preparing their hang gliders who have gathered on Lookout Mountain in Dade County, Georgia, near Chattanooga, Tennessee, to compete in the American Cup, which is an international event to which hang gliding teams have come from all over the world. Canada, Great Britain, the U.S., and Japan, one of whose members has skied down Mount Everest and wants now to hang glide off her. Here's the British team. Hang gliding is very popular in England, and its team members are supposed to be the favorites here in Chattanooga. Their captain, Brian Milton, has his notion of how they're going to approach the competition.
I think it's actually going to be playing percentage hang gliding. It's in the same way as Jack Nicklaus plays percentage golf. We had a long discussion on this the other day. We're playing percentage hang gliding. The American Cup is going to go, first of all, in the early stages, to the team that makes the least mistakes.
You bet $5 with the Americans you're going to go back with the Cup. Now, what if you don't?
We think we're going to go back with that wager, but if we lose, we're going to come back again and again and again and again, and we're going to get that American Cup.
Launching pad from where it all begins. A few steps, and the hang gliding pilot is airborne and flying free. Originally, hang glider pilots wearing water skis were pulled up to flying altitude on the end of tow ropes, but in the 1970s, pilots began to go off the mountain. Purity and being able to go off under their own power. Two competitors, Wayne Walker, who's a Canadian, a part-time farmer, and Sean Dever from the American team, set off on practice flights to prepare for the competition. It's not a part of competitive hang gliding to stay aloft for as long as possible. But there is a record, 11.5 hours up there, until Vince Arliss, who holds it, got hungry or something, thirsty perhaps for a beer, and down he finally flew. They look for the thermals, which the hawks look for too. And pilots tell of sneaking up on the hawks from above and making a grab at their tail feathers. That's Wayne Walker up there, and here's how he got started.
I had read some literature on the subject at one time, and worked in the city in the wintertime. Happened to pass by a hang glider shop and walked in, asked them what it was all about, and got interested right away. Bought my glider that day and started taking lessons.
You know, I'm wondering about my first flight. How did you feel that first time up?
Exhilarated. I was in love right from the start with the sport. Really a lot of fun.
Francis Rogallo is considered the father of hang gliding. NASA almost uses designs to land spacecraft before deciding on parachutes. The pilot suspension seat, the triangular control bar, came out of Australia in the 60s. Today, the hang gliding distance record is 103 miles. Quite a giant step from the short distances the Wright brothers ground skipped off the sand dunes of Kitty Hawk.
Nobody knew the Wright brothers as glider pilots, but they were expert glider pilots, and nobody thought too much of it. That's how they learned to fly, by hang gliding, exactly the way we're doing now.
And what was your most memorable flight?
Boy, there's been a bunch of them, you know, but probably the nicest flight I've had was flying Clinch Mountain and traveling along a ridge for 32 miles. You know, it was just incredible.
In competitions such as the American Cup, it's another matter. The pilots haven't much time to savor such exhilarations because they must concentrate on doing a series of maneuvers in the air, including full turns and then figure eights around a number of pylons set out on the ground below. Then they must concern themselves with the landing upright and as close to the center of the target, the bullseye, as possible, with judges awarding and deducting points for every aspect of the flight. In competition, indeed every time a hang glider goes aloft, safety equipment is worn. Aircraft quality harnesses, a parachute worn out there in front, a helmet, the variometer, which measures rate of ascent and descent, an altimeter. The subject of safety, frankly, was of particular interest to me, especially when I found myself standing on the top of a giant sand dune near Benton Harbor, Michigan, with Dave Braddock and Tracy Knaus, two hang gliding experts who were going to try to teach me to fly.
Hold your rod in, and it's just like a swing.
Oh, yeah.
You just be hanging right underneath it.
So I don't have to hang on to anything up here at all?
Well, you do have to hang on to the bar down there, all right, just to control it. But
Okay.
it's just like you were swinging back and forth in a swing set, okay?
Are we actually going to fly this time?
No, well, you will be flying, but we'll be hanging on to you. This is an Australian training technique that I learned while I was over there this winter. And the main purpose of this is just to give you a feel for it before you actually have to fly on your own.
I see.
We'll still keep you from crashing or having any bad experiences, and you can get some experience with the pitch control, looking at the target, and just get to relax a little bit more. Familiarize you with the equipment before you actually have to fly.
And you're going to hang on?
Right, we'll
Otherwise
be hanging on as hard as we can.
Otherwise, I want that parachute. Okay.
Just keep it 3 inches away from your waist, look at the target, and you'll be sweet.
Okay.
Ease out a little bit. Ease out a little bit. There you go. Look out.
I could feel the lift of the wing, and I looked forward, I guess, to trying it without that crew of people hanging on, and then being truly airborne on my own. This is what I was aspiring to, and where you get if you keep at it. The professional Doug Heath, making it look so easy, and such a thing of pleasure, seeing truly through the eyes of the red-tailed hawks they fly with in the thermals. Just the chance to be at one with the birds like that would be enough to get me interested in hang gliding. The present-day hang gliding kite is a designing marvel which features both strength and lightness. The fabric is nylon, the bones of the wing are made of aluminum, and the entire weight of most kites is only about 50 pounds. The kites can be made to adapt to different kinds of performances in the air. Competitive, for distance, and then for aerial acrobatics. Doug Heath and Ed Caesar, you've been watching them prepare their kites, are among the best pilots in the country. Great friends, they love talking about their skills. Ed Caesar specializes in pushing the performance capabilities of his kite to the extreme. As perhaps the greatest aerobatic flyer in the country, he obviously flies not for the pleasure of viewing the scenery.
Well, most of the people in the sport are just, they're into flying and the peace that it brings them. That's one point of view. And another thing is that flying is something that you have to follow a fairly rigid set of rules. And if you don't, it tends to go off the deep end pretty quick.
With all the emphasis on safety, the type of aerobatics Ed was doing hardly seemed that to me.
Well, safety is has a different connotation when you're talking about pushing your own limits. Hang gliding is something where, for me, I've just learned how to push my own limits to the point where it's a little beyond what other pilots are doing right now, and so they have something to shoot for, and that's really neat because it pushes the sport out to a safer point.
Ed and other expert pilots have developed the judgment that allows them to make the proper decisions at the proper time. And there are a lot of actually life-saving decisions that are made moment by moment, second by second in the air. You're always confronted with different decisions to make.
Well, flying again is a activity where you have to develop a different sense. And I don't know how the birds feel, but it's darn close to how birds feel because it's so quiet. And when you're cruising through the air, you don't really feel your glider. You actually become part of it.
Every time we fly, every time we take off from a cliff, you get that good adrenaline rush, and it's just like I'm in the air again.
It's incredible. It's a feeling that you find your own truth inside of you.
I think, as corny as it may sound, at times character is really built through it. The perspective one gains while flying is just absolutely phenomenal. There's no other way to see the Earth just like that, like a bird sees it.
American Cup competition, the hang glider pilots have a lot on their minds other than the aesthetics of flying. First of all, flying as a team, 8 on each, means that a lot of information about what's out there, wind currents, thermals, downdrafts, and so forth, is passed from one who's experienced them to those about to take off. And second, there's quite a difference between flying for oneself, even competitively, and then representing one's country.
We've never flown for the country before. We've always flown for ourselves. So if you make a big mistake here, you're letting down your teammates, okay? You're letting down the country.
By the time the competition was half over, the British were in the lead, the Americans second, the Canadians third, and the Japanese team, who in some only knew 2 words of English between them, good morning and thank you, they were a distant fourth. Mostly, as you'll see quite shortly, because of their difficulty coming in for landings. The quality which seemed essential to competitive flying seemed to be, as it is really with all sports, concentration.
It's near 200%, I would say, yeah. It's total concentration. You can't think of anything else. It's total concentration all the time. From takeoff, you've got to start thinking about the landing.
It turns out there are other qualifications than total concentration. For example, one of the mandatory exercises called for in the competition was for the pilots to fly out from the mountain and cross a given line as close to the 10-minute mark as possible, which required staying aloft for exactly that amount of time. One does that by looking for thermals, updrafts of warm air, in order to get in there and stay up. To do this requires almost sensory perceptions.
What I try to do is think like a bird and try to sense the air. You know, you can't see the air, so you have to have an imagination and sense the lift and so forth. And I also want my glider to be an extension of my body. In other words, my controls are automatic. I don't have to think about them, and the glider just does what I want to do just by sense almost.
The thought of the glider as an extension of the body, as Dennis Pagan referred to it, is particularly important in landing. The British team scored heavily in this department with very accurate landings, many of them putting down their toes on the bullseye with all the precision of a bird settling down easily on a branch. The other teams had more difficulty. Sometimes their gliders would very definitely not behave like an extension of the body, but quite independently. Back from the perils of Lookout Mountain to the top of my Lake Michigan sand dune. Just as perilous as far as I'm concerned, because here I am getting ready for that first solo.
I'll show you what you have to do. Okay. Yeah, go ahead and step behind that bar, and we'll pick it on up. Now, the bar is in the same position as when you fly.
Right now.
The glider, however, doesn't fly at such a high angle attack, so try to disregard that. You want to keep the bar 3 inches away from you. That'll keep the glider flying at 20 miles an hour so that you'll be under control. If you go below 20 miles an hour, you will stall, lose control of the glider, and most probably crash. So you want to keep it right at 3 inches.
If I begin to stall, what do I do?
Pull it back towards your waist. Your hips are the center of gravity on your body. That's the center of mass. This is controlled by weight shift. Wherever you move, the center of your weight, that's what's going to cause the glider to react the most quickly.
Left, go to the left.
Right. Whichever way you swing your hips is the direction you go. As you're flying down, keep the bar 3 inches away and keep your eyes right on the target. That way, you can line up on the target. As you're flying along and the target starts to move off to the right, you don't have to know to swing to your right, just swing towards the target. You don't have to know your right from your left that way. And everything should go pretty well. When you come into land, push up and out all the way and stand up. You want to get your hips as far away from the bar as possible. Never stick your legs out in front of you, or you'll dig in and crash. Okay?
Wish you wouldn't use that word crash.
Oh, crash. I know, it's a bad one, but you got to use it to reinforce what you say.
Okay.
Okay?
Done.
Good one. Let's go up the hill.
It's a bit like standing on the edge of a pool. Very cold water in there indeed. And you keep taking breath after breath until finally you go.
There you go, there you go. There you go. There you go. Run.
Well, no water in that pond.
Run.
Nor in this one. Third attempt. Airborne. Very cool, though, crossing my legs like that. Like a pterodactyl. Casting a big shadow here, people scattering underneath me. Well, there's another three-point landing for you.
Not a very good landing.
But at least a flight, and a sense of flying. Well, they wouldn't let me quit, so they got me up there again. That's either determination or fright, you see there. Lifting the wing, brushing away the sand, no excess weight. Trying to get the angle of the wing just right. And then once again, gulping slightly, I took those first steps of commitment. A somewhat frightening and somewhat tentative start, as you can see there. But then I got a fine, if somewhat temporary, sense of what hang gliders call ultra-light flight. There you see it. And punctuated by a nice two-point landing. Look at that. Even given that great thrill, I don't suppose I got up more than 15 feet. So imagine what it must be like to fly with the skill and the daring of an Ed Caesar. Let's fly with him. Watch the horizon as he takes off from the mountain and puts his kite through a series of really remarkable aerial maneuvers. The end of the competition for the American Cup was signaled by the dropping of skydivers. And when the tally was completed, the British team turned out to be the victors, sharing a $5,000 prize and winning the $5 side wager from Tracy Knaus, the meet director. The Francis Gallo Award for the best individual performance, voted by his peers, was won by a member of the American team, Rich Grigsby. He was once a trapeze flyer in the circus under the big top. Now he flies the limitless sky. That was the impression I was left with, that one of the interesting ratios in sport is to what degree winning is more important to the competitor than just the pleasure of the sport itself. Surely hang gliding is one of those sports
whose thrills give its participants an extraordinary exhilaration, independent of victory or loss. An ultimate high that comes simply with the excitement of flying unencumbered above the earth.
Hang glider man, he loves to fly. Hang glider man, he loves the wind and the sky. Hang glider man, he loves to fly. Look how he flies. Hang glider man, he loves the wind, he loves the sky.